as many of you who have been my students will know, when you study with me, I always make students write every day. And that's a little bit unusual. It's very rare to find a teacher who insists that students write every day. And I have some very good reasons for why I ask students to produce English, but especially writing. Now, if you use language verbally, if you're talking to people, it's very good. You can speak to somebody, and if they give you what you want, you know if you expressed yourself clearly, if you said what you really wanted to say. But very often it's difficult to be sure, if not impossible to be certain, that the person really understood you. I mean, there's very rare situations where somebody has to provide you with something that is exact to know if you really expressed yourself clearly. So it's also rare to find people who will correct you when speaking. For example, when I'm listening to students, I want to encourage them to be talking, so I don't want to correct every mistake they make. And actually, as an English speaker, I also make mistakes sometimes. And it's normal that in conversation, we allow people to make mistakes. So it's difficult to know if you're using English correctly when you're speaking. When you're listening to people, it's really easy to think that we understand something perfectly when we don't. So how do we know? Well, there are certain situations in the world when people ask us for something and we give them something and they say, that's not what I wanted. So there are situations where listening comprehension, our ability to understand what people are saying, can be tested. But that's rare. A lot of the time we're listening to people talking in conversation, or we're listening to a film, or we're listening to a television program, or we're listening to a documentary. And so then it's very difficult to know if we are really understanding what the person is saying to us. So how do we know? Well, it's very difficult. You have to have a test to be able to check that. And so normally we have to accept that we think we understand most of what people are saying. Usually we just want to have the gist of what they're saying. Now, if it comes to reading, when we're reading, it's the same thing as listening. We don't always know if we exactly understand everything that the person is saying to us. We can read an article, we can read a book, and we think we understand, and maybe we will understand the feeling and the main idea that someone is trying to say. But unless you have very good English, it's difficult to really appreciate everything that someone is saying. So again, we can't be sure that we are really using English correctly. Now, the one exception to all of these is writing. When you write in English and somebody corrects it, you are able to see exactly what mistakes you're making. The person can tell you, because it's still, because it's not moving, because it's on a page and you've written it, the person is able to see if your grammar is correct, if you're using the vocab correctly, the vocabulary, and then you're able to receive corrections that will help you to change your habits. Lots of people who speak English develop very bad habits because they're not corrected, because people don't tell them when they're making mistakes. And as I said, it's impossible for a teacher to correct all your mistakes when they're talking with you, when you're having a conversation, because they want to understand what you want to say. So it's only when we're writing can we see if we really understand grammar and vocabulary correctly. And that's why I always push my students to write as much as possible. And that's why I'm going to start a new writing class where I will invite students to write every day, or at least every week, and to send their sentences to me so that I can then correct them and be able to send them back so you can see the mistakes that you're making. For example, many students will just use the present simple all the time. I get up, I have a shower, I catch the bus, but they're actually talking about the past. They want to say, I had a shower, I got up, I caught the bus. But because people understand, they don't correct them. But when you write it down, you can see the mistakes that you're making and you can start to change your habits. So I'm inviting you to join me for this writing class, which I call the Writing Review. Send me sentences every week. I will correct them. And then once a week, I will record a film where I will show you the process of correcting the sentences. Any of the students that have worked with me in Brighton, in my classes, will know that I use this process every day. And it can be very helpful for you to see the common mistakes that students make. And you will also be able to see your sentences as they are being corrected. So I hope to join you for more writing reviews in the future.